Welcome to the Lost Vet podcast, where we are helping you to get back to your passion and purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Melodie Chan, and in today's episode of Destination People, we are embarking on part 1 of a 3-part series of my interview with Victoria Bond. Victoria helped to co-author the Lost Vet book with Rob Marr, and she is also the co-founder of a company called Talent Loop, based in the UK. Her and her co-founder are consultants and specialists in attracting and retaining talent. So this 3-part series is all going to focus on how we retain talent. Have a listen. We are so excited to have you on today. For our listeners, Victoria is a consultant and specialist in attracting and retaining talent. And her company that she has is based in the UK. And we are always up for some good tips and tricks on helping to manage the people side of the veterinary business. So pleased to have you with us today, Victoria.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. You'll have to keep me in check because I can talk about this for days. So, if I get the cut off sign, I understand. I won't take it personally.
Fair enough. Which is always nice. I find, when we talk to veterinary practice owners or business owners, and you say the 2 words human resources or just the acronym HR, and you can sometimes see this shudder happen across these people as they're just thinking, oh, that is the toughest part of my job is managing people. And then additionally in vet clinics, one of the big challenges I think we find is just retaining talent. There's that first part of attracting talent, because there's right now, for people who want to go into clinics, I think there's quite a variation of options. And so I think this is a timely topic for us to dive into with your expertise in just how we approach that.
Yeah. And I think, that kind of fight for talent, and actually one of the places that I want to start when it comes to retention is recruitment, and we'll get onto that. But I think, when we've fought so hard to get that talent, it then can be, really heartbreaking when we lose that talent. And so more and more, actually, that, the clients that we're working with in the UK are kind of shifting away from how can I find the right talent to how do I keep the talent that I've got. And I don't know whether that's kind of the same across the pond. But yeah, there's that real kind of focus on retention and the investment, both time and, quite frankly, money that kind of retention costs and takes.
Mm-hmm. So where do you want to start with this broad topic, Victoria? You're the expert, so I will maybe let you guide us through this and this idea of how to retain talent.
All right, so let's start. I thought what we'd do is we'd kind of start with some high-level principles about the way that I think about retention.
Yeah.
So the way that I think about retention is kind of goes in layers. So what sits behind retention, what we're really trying to tackle, is retention's the outcome that we're trying to avoid, if you like. But actually, what the kind of the lead measure is, and what sits behind that, is actually employee engagement and employee experience. So creating those fantastic environments for employees to work in. And often the analogy that I use when it comes to employee engagement is it's like a bank account. So if you picture your bank account and, full of coins, or in this instance, full of employee engagement. When we do great things in our business, and when we're kind of doing things that are a positive impact on our culture, that's like a deposit that we're putting more coins in our pot. And what that allows us to do is, when inevitably things happen in a business that would mean that we kind of have to make an emotional withdrawal, and that happen, that can be a change. It can be something more dramatic like redundancies or, a closure of a site or something. That there'll naturally be a withdrawal that comes out of that bank account. But the name of the game is to make sure that we've always got a positive a positive kind of amount in our bank account, because when we start to see really acute retention issues, attrition issues, is where we've run out of funds in our bank account. And actually, then when change happens, you've got nothing to draw down on. There's no kind of goodwill left. There's no engagement left for us to draw down on. So the more great stuff that we can kind of put in, it gives us that buffer for when we come across those, those things that naturally happen in an organisation that might make withdrawals. I don't know whether that's helpful. In my head, that makes sense as an analogy, but please, kind of give me the feedback if it doesn't.
I think what sort of resonates with me is that idea that it takes time to build that bank account. So, it's something to be mindful of, that it's a continuous day-to-day process, and little things add up. So it's a good reminder that it's even just the little small actions day to day in building that culture, so that when things get unstable, or like you said, if there's a change, something that you're thinking about, a withdrawal in that respect, then you've got that foundation and that base there already. So yeah, I it works for me.
Okay, love that.
Good.
So should we start to dig in then?
Yes,
So
let's
the first place that I thought that we would start thinking about that kind of employee journey that employees go on. So they'll often start by coming in through a recruitment process. And this is really the first place where we start to build retention. So even before we have got our employees through the door, we're starting to think about retention. And that's on the basis that actually it's the first opportunity that we've got to build engagement. So that recruitment process, that candidate experience that you create during your recruitment process, is like a window into your organisation, and it often tells candidates more than you would, believe. So like I say, it's that first impression that we really give to potential employees, and it's that chance to build engagement right from the beginning. So, there's things that we help within here. So it can go from everything from what we call EVP, which is like that means employee value proposition. So this is kind of like the package and the deal that you're giving to employees. What's the culture like? How are we articulating that? What's the offer? What's the package? what they're going to get in return for working for us? Through to, how respectful are we during our recruitment process? And this is a big one. Are we being respectful of candidates' time? Are we are we going through a quick recruitment process and making quick decisions because that's what we need to do and that's what the candidate wants? Are we are we making people go to a physical interview when we don't need to, when we could have done it online? Are we being respectful in terms of that kind of it being a two-way process during that candidate experience? But then also I'd kind of expand on that really in terms of, that building engagement during a recruitment process can really expand into even those people that you decline during a recruitment process. You decided they're not you for your organisation. The way that you handle those, thank you very much, here's some feedback, and we move on. Actually, what you're doing there is you're building your employer brand with people who weren't right for your organisation but might go and talk to other people. And so really, hopefully I kind of I'm articulating well why I always think retention starts in that recruitment process, because it's those first impressions. It's really that first time where we're showing people who might come and work for our organisation who we really are and what we're really about and what our values are as an organisation. And if they like that, we're building engagement, and that eventually leads to retention. And if they don't, that's where we, even if you do recruit, then you might end up with a bad hire, and we see quite a lot of kind of turnover during early stages of employment. But yeah, that's why I always kind of start with recruitment.
Mm-hmm. Can you expand a little bit on the people then that are not chosen, and how you coach companies and people, hiring managers, to communicate what methods and, how far do you go in providing feedback? Do we call them? Do we just send an email? What is generally your guidelines in that space?
Quite honestly, it depends on the type of role. So if you've got a volume role, so what I mean is you're recruiting lots of people, and you just need to get through the volume. What I would say there is, from a practical and sanity perspective, everybody needs some kind of written no thank you very much that's really polite, that says, if you want us to keep in touch, please do. That signposts them maybe to your careers page or how they can keep in touch. With more senior roles, I've known processes, and that we've kind of had to address and rebuild, where we've put a really senior candidate through 3, 4, 5 stages of process. They've not got the job, and we've just ghosted them at the end. And we've just been really disrespectful. One, with that candidate's time, and the process that we put them through, and the emotional, the amount that it kind of takes to go through all those stages, but then to kind of not give them that feedback at the end. And particularly with senior candidates, actually, what you need to remember is they've probably got great networks, and it's the same with going into, I don't know, a great restaurant. You'll give a friend a great restaurant recommendation, but you'll also tell them to avoid that restaurant if you didn't think that you didn't have a great experience there. And it works both ways. And I imagine that within clinic world, it is quite a small network. Not, there's only certain universities who are churning out people with the right skills. There's only so many opportunities to go around, and so many candidates. People will know each other. And actually, if you aren't being respectful, if you've decided somebody isn't for your organisation, fine. Particularly if they are a senior candidate, give them a call, be respectful, tell them why, and make sure that you are protecting your employer brand, as I would call it, whilst you go through that kind of, decline process.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's kind of goes back to the basics of just good manners, I would say.
Yeah, it is. But you'd be surprised how many people don't do that.
Yeah.
And I get it. We're all busy. It's admin. Nobody enjoys the admin. And actually, nobody enjoys the conflict. It's really tough gig calling a candidate to say that you haven't been successful. But hopefully I've kind of solved the reasons why we should do that.
Yeah. No, that's great. So once we've gone through this recruitment process, then, in thinking about retention, always keeping that at the forefront of our mind, what comes next for you then?
So the next place that we tend to talk about is onboarding, induction. So this is about those first really early critical days when we bring somebody into the organisation. And again, this is a really kind of vulnerable time for both the organisation and for the employee. And it's a really critical time to kind of build engagement, and which then leads to retention. So I would, if you haven't put any thought behind an onboarding process and how you welcome people into your organisation, I would really encourage you to do that. And what that looks like is kind of writing down a process that says, this is what great onboarding and induction looks like in our organisation. Mm-hmm. And depending on the role, that needs to be personalised to the individual. So, think about, what have you learned about that person during the interview process? It's unlikely that you've got 100% match for that, for candidate bringing in. So what are the skills gaps, or the knowledge gap, or the personal development gaps that you already know about that person, that you can start to support them with during that onboarding process, that is just really going to blow them away, because nobody's ever kind of been that supportive and during an onboarding process. But who are those people that they need to meet, and how can you galvanize them around those people in those early days? even down to, we've got some clients that we've helped build induction programs for, where we have looked at their personality profiling and said, right, this person really likes detail, data. And so let's just kill them with spreadsheets in the first week because they're going to absolutely love it. Versus me, who, if you put a spreadsheet in front of me during my first week, I'm out of there. And actually what I want to do is I want to meet all of the people, and I want to know their life stories, and I want to know how many kids they've got and what their dogs are called, etc. And really thinking about, actually, how do we build that engagement really early days in a really kind of personalized way to make everybody have the best possible start in our organization. And one of the things that we talk about when it comes to onboarding is this concept of time to competency. Mm-hmm. So time to competency is really about how long does it take you to come into a role and get up to speed fully? How long does it take in order to get return on investment out of that hire that you've made? So for some roles that are really kind of process driven, really repeatable, time to competency can be a matter of weeks. For others, it can be a matter of months. We've got clients that work with that the compliance stuff that sits around their role is so arduous, if you like, that it takes them 2.5 years to get to time to competency when they start to. So they've got a really vulnerable period of 2.5 years where they've got to make sure that those employees stay within their organisation. Otherwise, they've lost. They're never going to see return on that hire, if you like. And the better job that you do of onboarding employees into the organisation, making them feel comfortable, making it really clear what success criteria looks like, etc., the better job you can do with that, the shorter your time to competency will be, and the sooner you'll see that return on investment. But all the time, if those employees are feeling supported, they're feeling really clear, they're feeling very welcomed, we're building engagement and we're increasing our chances of retention.
Mm-hmm. I can see that concept of time to competency being helpful on both sides, for both the person that you've brought in and also the employer, so the employee and the employer. What comes to mind for me is thinking in a veterinary clinic, for example, something like you said, that's more process driven. So somebody who's maybe a kennel assistant, perhaps working reception, front desk, that's more processes. I can see then that, and that discussion of sort of time to competency, I would be thinking would be sort of a matter of weeks, maybe 1 to 2 months, where something more complex for an animal health technician and then a veterinarian, especially I think of a new graduate to new associate veterinarian. In my mind, something this might really help with those new veterinarians is actually having that dialogue with them. That time to competency may take a year or more. And it, in that discussion, it actually helps to alleviate that stress that these high performers tend to put on themselves, and just a reminder that, again, it's a process. We're not expecting you to be ready to go fresh out of the gate.
Absolutely. And you are going to feel out of your comfort zone for at least the next 12 months, and that's okay. And here's the support that will wrap around you, but almost like, don't freak out that you feel uncomfortable for the next 12 months, because that's normal, and we've done the homework, and that is normal.
Yeah. I like this though, but it allows you also to have that accountability and build in milestones, because again, we could take it too far and think, oh, okay, well, no one's really expecting me to be competent at anything until, for another 12, 24 months. So I can just take it easy. What I like about this is the language that we're actually putting words to it. We're putting structure. We're allowing space for a dialogue to happen both ways.
I think, you've touched on a point there that probably is for another podcast, but around kind of setting those success criteria for induction and onboarding, and making it really super clear to the employee what success looks like, what support you're going to give them, and kind of making sure that they understand what good looks like so they can achieve that. Or sadly, you can have the conversation on the opposite if that's needed, but you're basing it on something that you've been really clear on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we've done the onboarding and the induction.
Right, you ready for where we're going next? Okay, so let's talk about values, vision, mission, and purpose.
Okay.
So this is about kind of creating that connection with our employees. So vision, mission, values, purpose. This is all about making it really super clear. And this definitely comes into the recruitment and the onboarding process. So this is not kind of a later thought. This is just kind of underpinning it. But this is really about saying to the employee, this is what our organisation is about. This is why we're here. Creating that connection, so maybe that emotional connection with the employee, and helping, and then kind of saying to the employee, this is how you fit into this. So what we're doing there is we're making it really clear, this is what we stand for, believe in us and fall in love with us as an organisation, but also this is the contribution that you make to our organisation. So again, you can see how you would build engagement there and build retention, because we're connecting those dots so clearly to say, this is the impact that you have, this is why you come to work every day, this is where we're going as an organisation, and this is the part that you play in this. And again, as kind of a practical tip, I would make sure that wherever possible, everything's kind of pointing back to that purpose and that vision, mission, values. If I had £1 for every organisation who had who just mentioned vision, mission, values in their induction process and then kind of quickly moved on and it's never mentioned again. But actually, if you think about that, kind of how important that is for the employees' grounding in that organisation, it's kind of important that we keep revisiting that.
Something that actually really struck me as you spoke about this, I don't think, Victoria, I have actually had anyone say, remember how that person you've just brought on fits into it. What's their impact? How are they contributing? And for me, I think that's the missing link that I feel happens a lot of the time. Because as you described, we'll have organizations that tell the employee, here's what we stand for, here's what it is, and they proudly show up their vision, their value, vision, mission, and then, like you said, they move on and they don't necessarily incorporate that individual. And so that to me was a very, very valuable nugget of just how do you again make that person feel like they can be a difference maker.
Yeah, absolutely. And that usually goes down to those kind of individual goals or KPIs that you would set somebody, again, making it really clear what success looks like in any role. But if they can understand why that's important, if you're answering phone calls, this is, we've set you an objective around the way that you answer the phone calls or how many phone calls you answer. And this is why this is really important to the overall, mission, vision of the organisation. You're creating purpose, you're creating meaningful work for them.
Here's maybe a sort of technical question. Who do you tend to direct to be the person, or is it multiple people, that is responsible for communicating this part? Like when you've brought somebody in, and again, depending on the size of the organization, right? I can see sometimes it might be the HR manager or the person, sort of the personnel manager, or should it be the direct supervisor? What's a guidance there?
So the way that I have seen this done best is that senior leadership set that vision and paint that picture for everybody. And then it goes in a cascade down. So typically you'll have kind of departments or something underneath that. where those kind of top leaders are responsible for ensuring that those leaders underneath them are absolutely clear on the part that their piece plays in the overall. And then it goes downwards, usually in the hierarchy. Okay, so they're now responsible for making it really super clear to that person and to those people underneath them. And that's usually the best way to do it, because what you can do is for each, let's take sales as an example, the kind of top board, they've made it really clear what part the sales team play in that. Okay, well, I'm the sales leader, so I'm going to make sure that my business development team absolutely understand it, my key account management team understand it, my sales effectiveness or enablement team absolutely understand it. They understand the part that we play, and they understand the part that them as an individual is contributing to, and how it all rolls up.
I think you'll agree that there were so many wonderful insights in this initial conversation that I had with Victoria. I liked how she framed it as thinking about retention as the outcome that we're striving for, and how you get to that outcome is thinking about that employee engagement and culture that you're building within your business. So in your veterinary practices, what is it like to go into work every day? And thinking about it as a bank account, and it's a series of deposits and withdrawals, and hopefully your everyday actions, however small, however big, that you're constantly putting in deposits into building great culture and great employee engagement, so that when things become a little more challenging and withdrawals are needed to be taken out, that you still have a strong foundational core. I really liked how Victoria got us to think about retention right from your interview process, right from that initial recruitment process. How do you make candidates feel, whether they actually come on board with your business or they don't get the job, and thinking about how that spreads and how that feeling and the word spreads, especially in our community that's so small, in what that whole process is like. And again, it's a bit of, as I mentioned, staying with good manners, and for those that don't get the role and don't get the job, just to at least acknowledge that thank you for applying, and providing them some sort of response so they can have closure, and hopefully not ghosting them, because that just doesn't feel good. The second piece she talked about was the onboarding and induction process. And I think we can all think back to some really great experiences that we've had in our careers, and some not so great experiences that we've had in our careers. And so thinking about what that whole process feels like and looks like. Does it look like we know what we're doing when we're bringing new people in? How do we roll things out? Are we organized, and are we meeting them with what they need? And do we actually start to know the individuals so that we can help guide them along in this process? And the third one, and I think this becomes the anchor for the rest of our discussions, was having that clear values, vision, mission, and purpose for your business. It's not just being able to say what it is and what your organization is striving for and what it believes in and what its values are, but truly living into those every day. The piece that I had never really heard before that I really liked that Victoria articulated is how you communicate to your new recruit how they fit in to your values, vision, mission, and purpose. That part for me was really key, because that brings it full circle in showing how that person can have an impact, how that person fits in, and how they are part of providing that excellent service to the clients and customers, and also just the team around them. It makes me think of my conversation with Jody Lynch Finley early on in this season. I believe it was episode 1, when we talked about generations. And Jody said that one key word in thinking about how do we bring all the generations together is impact, remembering that everybody wants to have an impact. And Victoria used that same word today of just what is that impact this individual can have in the context of the organization's value, vision, mission, and purpose. I hope this was helpful, and just stay tuned because next week we'll be back with part 2 and there's more gems to be had. Thanks for listening. Until next time.